one of the two cards or three cards, moon, star, and sun, that I'm least comfortable with in terms of a divination or something like that. So, so here we are. We're on to YouTube. For those of you who want to follow the YouTube chat, you can also do that. And here we go. So good evening, everyone out there in YouTube land. We are talking about the tarot as a roadmap for life. And what we mean by that is that the cards of the tarot represent what happens in every human life, always have and always will. And I'm going to be speaking about what that means a little bit more later. But the point is, between now and the 18th of January, we're doing the major arcana. So we're spending one evening on each card to talk about what the connotations of the card are. And so tonight the topic is the moon. And so we're all going to talk about it. We're going to show you some different examples of the moon card and how it's been interpreted differently. And the ultimate archetypes haven't changed in the tarot for 600 years. And so, but how they're represented has changed very dramatically in many ways. So we're going to show you that. And so the first thing we're going to do this evening is we're going to go around the room and have everybody talk about what the moon card means to them. So we'll start with Nick.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody.
And meanwhile, I'll put the moon card on the screen so that everybody can see it.
Okay, so just a few keywords for me that come up. The first thing is corporeal or bodily intelligence, the path, the feet, and the image-making function of the psyche.
Oops, that isn't what I wanted to share. Just a moment. Garbage in, garbage out. There we go. Okay, there it is. All right, so go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so yeah, all I said was just it makes me think of corporeal intelligence or the bodily intelligence.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, corporeal means body, the intelligence of the body.
But you're talking about the human body, but there are no humans in this image here. So why are you referring that in that way?
Okay, well, I was hoping we could just get into that once it wraps back around to me. But if you like, I can go ahead and give an explanation.
Well, at least to explain that part of it.
Okay, so the intelligence associated with this card is the corporeal intelligence, and in the foreground of the card, you've got the mineral kingdom, symbolized by the rocks, the vegetable or the plant kingdom, symbolized by the plants and the grass, the animal kingdom, and the only thing that's left is the human kingdom. But there is no human on this well-worn path, indicating that we are the person that has to step in, and that's where the corporeal intelligence comes in. Right. I don't want to go too far into it, but I promise it's for good reason that I say this.
Okay. All right. Jordan, you want to take that up? And I'm looking for an image out of the Red Book, which I'll bring up here in a moment. But Jordan, you want to talk just in general about what the moon means to you?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll start from a basic place, is that the moon has no natural light of its own. So it's always light that is reflected. And here comes the intuition, reflections from an unseen source. So just like the lobster here, which is often shown as a crab, that's an animal that can live in two worlds, underwater and in the air, with just as much facility. So in that sense, you get an intense intuition here something that's almost at the level of transcendent and archetypal intuition, as it were. So you're getting the larger visions kind of ideas coming in with this card rather than just a normal intuitive function. Keywords I would use here would be vision, as in visions, genius, madness even, and poetry is a very much a moon kind of languaging mode. And the two concepts I would put in would be the words disorient and the words mesmerize are similar in concept, though mesmerize is more positive with wonderment and disorient is more negative with loss or instability or lack of balance.
I think also to add to your point, you say that the moon has no light of its own, but it's also, I think, noteworthy to say that the moon is a satellite planet. It only orbits the Earth.
Yes, and also I think with that no light of its own, in ancient cultures, the sun was the feminine force because it could bring life, and the moon in ancient cultures was often a masculine force. It reflected the light. So it's interesting to me now in our culture, the sun is usually perceived as masculine and the moon as lunar, like a woman's moon phase that was used for agriculture. I think from even a divination perspective, using the moon, there's often a quality of what inner wave does a person have that's particular to them. So if you look at how the ocean is moved by the lunar cycles, then how are the waves within you moved? And intuition is a wonderful place to see how that pond's rippled, would be my kind of short story of it.
Okay, Raquel?
What I have to say is very similar to what Jordan said, because I also believe that the moon card is about, I always say that it's about walking in the dark and making decisions without using your eyes, therefore without using actually rational thought, in a sense that you can also access other parts of yourself that is not actually based on rationality, and that is the most difficult part of the moon card, because we live in a world that you have to justify everything that you do with words, and you have to have everything has to have a meaning, and the moon card kind of takes that out of the picture, in a sense that the meaning that you're going to find in this path is different than what you are used to, in a sense. Therefore, if you are a very rational person, the moon card can be a very traumatic experience in some way, because you just are not used to use other functions of your brain, and of your body for that matter.
Okay. Nicole, do you have some thoughts about the moon?
Thanks for asking. I'm just drawn to, I really liked what Rochelle said. And I noticed that I'm really scared about this lobster coming out of the water. I don't know why. It's just because a lobster wouldn't normally do that. And, there's no human there. It's a really powerful card because it seems to speak to liminal things that can happen that are really unexpected. That's all I got.
Okay. All right. One thing that I want to bring to everybody's attention, and I want Nick to come back and comment on it because he was talking about this aspect of this card, is I want you to first take note of the crustacean coming out of the water, and then the two creatures that are barking at the moon. One of them is a dog. And one of them is a wolf. Okay, so there's a wolf, and then there's a civilized wolf, which is a dog, and there's a path, and then the moon. Okay, now I want to compare that with the very first page of the Red Book and Dr. Jung's image here. Okay, so here we have the different levels of life. First, the creatures down in the water, and I think there's actually a crab or a crustacean down there. And then there's the humans, then there's the top of the water where we're riding on the sea, and there's fire here pushing us up, and we're represented by this snake with the crown at the top. And so this represents these other realms that Nick was talking about. And so it's water, then air, then sky, then universe. And up here, he's got the astrological positioning in the universe at the time that he did this painting. So, Nick, do you want to talk about that and tell me whether you think there's a correspondence there?
I think it's very likely. I think it's a little bit different, but yeah, I mean, he's displaying these various realms or kingdoms, starting with the inorganic mineral kingdom of stones, minerals, things that have no sentience, and then you move to plants, and there's obviously some
civilization too here.
Yeah, civilization. I was talking in the case of the moon card, and then you move to the plants, which are somewhat sentient, and then animals, which are they have awareness. I don't know that I would say they have consciousness, in the sense that I don't know if they're self-aware. But then there is no human on the path, but it's a well-worn path, indicating that several humans have walked it before.
Well, and there are towers there which indicate that there were humans there before.
Yeah, and even though there's the absence of the human being, it kind of implies that we have to be that person. But I think it's also interesting that it's being a human. We are part animal as well, and we live a major portion of our lives teetering on our animal nature and our human nature. Right. And sadly, I think more of us than not choose to kind of live in the animal realm, or satisfying all of our want for food and pleasure and power and all of that stuff. And so I think a similar thing is laid out in that photo, certainly. Maybe not in the exact same order, but it's certainly all there.
Yeah. Okay.
What's up, Jordan?
In regards to that piece from the Red Book too, it was the one piece that calls out to me is the moon symbol is up there, and then he has the Cancer astrology symbol on the top and the left. And so that's moon and Cancer, and the crab usually, and I think Nicole's correct, lobsters don't usually come out of the water. So I've always taken issue with that lobster. It's usually a crab that will go in between earth, or on the earth, in the air, to the water and underwater. But also just that D, and this is something I hadn't noticed in that card, except with this, that D, especially the way he's fonted it, so to speak, is a moon arc in Tuscan red connected to a pillar to make the D. So even the shape and the way he did that, the D is very lunar. And so I that's the thing I just wanted to point out, is the Cancer astrology symbol at the very top in black above the moon. It's really small.
I think that's
I'll share that again here.
And then that to me makes a direct correspondence to the moon card, because the moon card is in Cancer.
Well, I mean, the thing that's interesting though is where do you get the Cancer thing? Are you just saying? Are you just
the crab?
The crab? Yeah, well, it's interesting because the moon as a planet rules Cancer, but this card isn't actually the moon. It's actually Pisces. And that's again like this sun up here is indicating it's in Pisces. I don't think he means it to be at the time that he made it, because if you're looking at it, it's a little bit below the halfway point, probably
Actually, that's
800 AD or so, in between the Aeon of Aquarius.
Yeah, it
And
might
well,
be.
but he is
he has-
firmly in the realm of Pisces, and there's that connection between the card we're talking about and this image here.
Well, the astrological symbols go Cancer, Gemini, Mercury, Aries. I can't see what the one underneath the sun being
Just
is.
backwards, because the precession of the equinoxes, which determines the astrological ages, is backwards. It's the precession, not the procession. So it's
Yeah, it is the precession that he was talking
backwards. So starting at Aries, it goes Aries, Pisces under the one wing there, and then Aquarius on the other, moving counterclockwise.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's other planets here in this image. I think this is Saturn,
Yeah,
because I think it has
this
some
is Saturn
rings.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and Jupiter.
So we could see if like Saturn, Gemini, and stuff like that, if you would accurately perceive this as a astrological point. But
Do you have the red book, Raquel?
no, I don't.
Oh, shucks. He has astrological symbolism all throughout the book.
Yeah, no, all over it.
It's really great. I mean, the book obviously, speaks for itself, but it's also pretty interesting to see the astrological stuff, because,
Oh, yeah.
not a whole lot of extant literature from Jung on astrology, although it obviously played a role in his thinking.
Penelope is saying here in YouTube that December 30 is full moon in Cancer. She's right. I'm gonna watch that.
Yes, it's all cloudy here. We can't see Jupiter and Saturn.
Yeah, same. I missed it, sadly.
I'm seeing. I can see that here. I can see Jupiter, Saturn, Mars. I can see all of it.
I
How
actually
bright.
watched it with Samantha, believe it or not,
Oh, nice.
because we were online talking, and Debbie came in the room and said, "It's on YouTube right now. You have to look at it." And so I made Samantha look at it too. So we both watched the actual conjunction.
Nice.
And so, okay.
I saw 3 guys walking down my street. They had frankincense and I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Bad, grown.
Okay. All right. So for simplicity, let me go back and read the Stefan Heller stuff, just so people hear that, and then we'll go to a comparison with the Bota deck, which Nick likes to do. Okay, so this is Stefan Heller. I'm sorry the scan isn't ideal, but
I hope this guy doesn't say everything that I want to say, because he normally
does.
same points. So
Well, then we can break up early tonight.
yeah.
Okay, so this is where the moon fits on the Kabbalah. So here, okay, the 18th Arcanum, the moon shown in its 3 phases looks down upon a nocturnal landscape wherein, from the pool of unconscious emotion, the primitive living form of a crayfish slowly climbs toward distant heights. A wolf and a dog sit beside the road, howling at the moon, representing the wild and the domesticated components of our instinctual nature. The towers of human intellectual and moral defense mechanisms loom on the horizon, to be bypassed on the road to the summit of final attainment. Okay, so final attainment, enlightenment or something. The seeds of divine life force in the form of falling drops, having the shape of the letter Yud, remind us of supernal energy vitalizing the emotional and instinctual self and stirring it into activity. Now, one thing that I want to emphasize here is that one of the reasons that it's useful to understand the archetypes and be aware of them is they can they can help us use our psychic energy and generate it. And that's, so if you know that and you know how to connect with that, then you're hugely advantaged in life. Okay, now he talks about the Hebrew letter, keynote from physical being to rise of the awareness of our emotional nature. This is Quaff, from Malkuth to Netzach is this, which is Malkuth is 10 and Netzach is here. We'll get into that. Motto, there is a tide in the affairs of men which taken at the flood. And so that's quoted from Shakespeare. Meditation. May I hear the call from on high through the tumult and confusion of the lower worlds. The voice of my Father calls to me from afar. May I never cease to heed this call and rally to the banner of my inward Lord as the battle of life rages. The Lord of my soul reigns above the water floods. He will remove all delusion and confusion from me. I shall stop, listen, and be silent in order to hear the voice. Louder than the thunder of the falling waters is the still, small voice that resounds from the distant place. I hear thee, O voice from above all voices. I heed thee, O call before all calls. And so this is the self trying to communicate with our ego mind, and so actually the reason why we should pay attention to this. Comments?
Very clearly about the inner self and the inner voice. And like you just said, the self communicating to the ego.
Right.
As a primary piece of importance, I think he's putting forth as well.
Right. Okay, now let me give you the comparison next so that you can make your comments on that. Okay, so this is the comparison between the Rider-Waite deck on the left and the Bota deck on the right.
Okay, so not a huge difference between these two cards. Just a nice, wonderfully colored card, but apart from that, the symbolism is pretty much the exact same. Okay, so to reiterate what I was saying about the intelligence of the body, or the corporeal intelligence. So you've got the four kingdoms here: the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and then the well-worn path, which implies some kind of humanity, a human to walk this path. And the reason that I have intelligence of the body, or corporeal intelligence, is that obviously within each person, the body has its own intelligence. Whether it be when we have a gut feeling about something and we just know deep in our stomach that something's wrong, or we get butterflies in our stomach, or our body's telling us that some sickness is on the rise, or that any number of
or even your heart to beat 72 times a minute.
Your heart beat, your breath, your blood flowing. All of those things are thought of to be kind of the subconscious intelligence of the body. Things that aren't necessarily under your will and conscious control, but they all operate in their own way without any interference. So that's a certain kind of intelligence in the body, but it's slightly different from the kind of intelligence in the body that I want to talk about. And the point that I intend to make with everything that I am about to say is that you see off in the distance of the card here, the pathway undulates like a moon, waxing and waning, up to a high mountaintop. Now, what other character in the tarot is on a high mountaintop? The Hermit. The Hermit is the most exalted character in the major arcana, and he's also the ninth card. So you've got 1 and 8 equaling 9. So this path leads out from the water all the way up to this long hike up into the mountain where the hermit waits. And the hermit card also holds a light, a lamp, lighting the path for all those that toil upwards towards him. Okay, so a few of the points that I want to make. So in order to have knowledge of spiritual things, of psychological things, of things that are really other than the body, one really has to have a healthy body for that consciousness to reside in. So, it's very difficult for somebody who has tons of bodily ailments of any kind to really leave the body or really, attain any kind of knowledge beyond that of just corporeal existence, just being in my body. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but on days when I've got a little bit of a cold or something, I typically feel almost like trapped inside of my body. I like to kind of go outside of myself and think about other things and get wrapped up in my studies. And I just find that when I'm not physically well, it's almost impossible for me to do that. So, I think that's a major factor in this card. So what I have written, in order to have knowledge of spiritual things, one must take care of the physical vessel in which this knowledge is to sit. So I want you to imagine yourself about to set out on this journey. You're about to take this long hike up to this mountaintop. And, what would you do if you were about to go do that? Well, I can tell you what you wouldn't do or what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't go to McDonald's and have a double cheeseburger and some fries and a Coca-Cola and then go try to do the hike, because you would just be malnourished. And, you would never make it to where you wanted to go, to where you wanted to end up at. In the same way that, if you were to decide that you wanted to go on a cross-country trip to go see the Rocky Mountains or something, you wouldn't go without having your car serviced, without making sure you've got good tires, that your oil is changed, that you've got gas in the tank. All of these things, they really matter, because they're all the vessel which is going to take us to this high and exalted place. And I think that, in the pursuit of spiritual knowledge or knowledge of the psyche and anything such as that, people tend to neglect the body and think that there's something evil about the body, or there's, it's something to abstain from, earthly pleasures and delights and all of that stuff. And while you should definitely work out right relationship to it, it's definitely not something to just neglect entirely. In fact, just the opposite. You have to really, really take care of your body if you were to move into understanding of higher things. So it's the idea of nourishment as it relates to bodily intelligence. So let's see here. Okay, so moving on to the path. Like I said, when we were talking about the red book, this card, even though the most befuddling thing about this card is that it's named the moon, but it actually is not the moon. It's the sign of Pisces. And in astrology, every sign rules a different part of the body. So starting from the head, moving all the way down to the feet, a sign rules a different part of the body. Aries rules the head because it's the first sign, and Pisces is the last sign. So as you would probably guess, it rules the feet, which walk on this path. And so moving on with that point, the path is well worn by many others, and health requires, and this is a pun, so I hope you get what I'm saying here. Health requires a good understanding of the bodily intelligence. Many early physicians were aware of this same fact and used practical medical astrology. Among those was Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, Paracelsus, and Nostradamus. They were all physicians, and they all also used medical astrology because they understood the merit of doing these things at the right time, and also the way that they relate to different parts of the body. Okay, so that has to do with the path that you're seeing. You know, it rules over the feet which walk on this path, and a good understanding that which you stand on has to be on solid ground. You know, you have to be rooted in some kind of fundamental understanding of the body, of the animal, of the plant, and of the inorganic mineral realm. Okay, so moving on to the Hebrew letter associated with this card. And this is, for me, where it gets very interesting. So this is the Hebrew letter Kaf. And Kaf, as with every letter in the Hebrew alphabet, has an image or a symbol, pictograph, whatever you choose, associated with it. This one is the back of the head. As you can see, the letter kind of looks like a brainstem, and then the back of the head, you know, something of a profile kind of like that. So in the back of the head is the occipital lobe, and in the occipital lobe is the visual cortex, and it's connected directly to your eyes. So when you process information through your eyes, it goes back through your nerves into the occipital lobe. It's processed through your visual cortex and turned into an image. So the thing that this brings to mind for me is the fact that there is the component of bodily well-being, of corporeal intelligence, that has to do with just exercise and just treating your body well, and also, you know, eating good food, seeking nourishment from things that you should seek nourishment from, and not from McDonald's and stuff like that. But there's also the way in which the image that we have of ourselves is directly related to our well-being. So, for example, think of what it does to a person when they have an image of themselves that, you know, maybe they're a very capable person, able to get the job done, whatever the job is. And, you know, that responsibility is put on them, and they say, oh, I don't see myself as the type of person who could ever do that. You know, it's like their image of themselves is incongruent with who they actually are. Also, in the sense that, you know, you have a different image of me than I have an image of me. You know, that's not necessarily a literal representation of who I actually am. It's your version of me. It's how you see me. It's equally as much a reflection of how you see yourself. So in the previous card, the five senses are refined. Now, through the image-making faculty of the brain, the physical body is refined. What was previously a physical process is now a psychophysiological process. The image one has of oneself and the bodily health of that person are directly related. So it's not so much got to do with the kind of new agey idea of the law of attraction and just creating this false image of the self and just being like, oh, you know, see yourself with a mansion and it will manifest. But it has more to do with the literal enactment of changing things that are under your control, like exercise, like diet, like things that really say to that self that you're talking about, that is calling out to you, that say, I'm taking this seriously. I'm willing to make this change and to actually enact some stuff, to implement changes in my life that are completely under my control.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
Okay, so to just wrap this up, I have two quick passages I want to read from
I'm
the Bible.
so sorry I missed most of what Nick had to say, but I really have to get some food. I'm really hungry. I don't know why I signed on right away, only to take a break. Is that all right? Okay. I'll see you guys soon.
All right. Okay, so let me just wrap up with 2 points here. And I would love it if we can talk about a couple of these things, because they're no doubt controversial, but at the same time, I think that they're really, if you actually decide to implement this stuff and really do some thinking about how your image of yourself affects your health, I think you'll have great results. So the two passages that I want to read first, 1 Corinthians 3:16 to 3:17. Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. Okay? 1 Peter 2:5. You yourselves, like living stones, just like those towers, are being built up as a spiritual house, to be a priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Now, one thing that I've talked about before is that the word for stone in Hebrew and the Kabbalah is Aben, which means it's Ab, meaning father, A-B, and B-N, Ben, meaning son. So Aben is father and son combined, and it also means the stone. So the final line of this is so potent. It says to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God the Father, Ab, through Jesus Christ, the Son. And, you know, there are all these living stones building up this spiritual house in this image. So what I have written to conclude: if we never service our vehicle, prepare to walk the path by nourishing ourselves with proper understanding of the bodily intelligence, or allow our temple to fall into ruins due to neglect of our custodial duties, we will never receive the spiritual and sublimated knowledge of the hermit on top of the mountain where the path ends. So it's a lot of information, I know, but it's, I think.
Awesome.
Well,
Everything that you said.
it's all very pertinent too. I mean, R.A. Schroller de Lubisch with the Temple of Luxor did the Temple in Man. The idea of the body as a temple is a very important piece. I really like where you dropped into the good understanding of bodily health, Pisces ruling feet, because then, as you well know, the underside of the feet, then you have reflexology and how the different places are related to different organs. And one of the reasons walking is so healthy is you basically are massaging all of your body by running your feet across the ground. So I've always asked the question of, well, if you have tall arches, are those parts of the body needing attention, or are they just naturally healthy? I mean, so it's a question that doesn't need to be answered, but reflexology comes up with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also been shown in recent years with research into exercise and cognitive functioning that, you know, that they are mutually beneficial. You know, it's probably one of the best preventative measures for things like Alzheimer's and dementia and, you know, just general cognitive impairments later in life, but also for stress relief, just general circulation of blood and how all of that affects how you think about things. And also the food that you eat. I mean, the food that you eat is directly related to the way that you think about things. I mean, I know when I eat a very poor meal, I just feel groggy, cloudy, unable to think. And you know, when I eat a nice salad or something that's just makes me feel good about what I've eaten, it's like, wow, I'm clear. I can think very well. And you know, that's not to be overlooked, although it is.
Well, and your blood oxygenates differently when you have healthier food, versus lipids and things. You mentioned them, you know, McDonald's kind of thing. What's interesting too is parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. I mean, autonomic functions. Your heart's going to go, your blood's going to go, but when you consciously get them to move and you contribute to that movement, parasympathetic and sympathetic, you are consciously enhancing and making yourself more. So to me, that's part of that health too, where it's not just, you know, sit on the couch potato, being, you know, parasympathetic person. You just kind of, you're in your own iron lung of a room.
It's really interesting too, because I think of most people like, you know, God love Jung. Think about how many hours that guy spent sitting in a chair, both doing analysis with people, writing all of his books. I mean, you know, he was a relatively healthy guy. I'm sure he got his work in, building his home, doing his walks and stuff. But I just think it's a classic example of the intellectual who's like all about pursuits of the mind, but completely neglects to take care of the vessel in which it all takes place in.
And still live to be very old.
Yeah, but I think that the moon and this awareness of the body also relates to some kind of memory, but not the memory that you can perceive like actual visual memory, but in a sense of when you talk about like walking the path with your feet and you make that relationship with the Hermit card, it's kind of like, first of all, it tells me that this path you have to walk alone. You cannot walk the path with someone else's feet, you know, and that is important in this card because sometimes when you really want to think about the meaning of this card, you cannot think about anyone else, even though you may have asked about someone else. You know, that answer, the moon card always shows you that the answers is within you. And also it's kind of relating to some kind of muscle memory that's also, that you can also like, it's kind of like when you get burned, you know, then you remember not to put your hand on fire, you know, but that also can happen with other things in life. I mean, if you had some kind of relationship that got really bad, you will not do it again. Or if you do it, your body is going to react. I think that is a very good way to perceive the moon card in a daily basis, you know, like when you're doing something and your body kind of like tries to retreat, you know, tries to run away, even though you kind of like, let's do this.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal example because I completely agree with everything that you said, but it also reminds me of how, you know, it's like bodily intelligence on a lower than conscious level because, you know, I wouldn't say unconscious, but definitely maybe subconscious because, you know, when I first started working in kitchens, I cut myself all the time. I mean, like, you know, I wasn't good with a knife, but also just, you know, I freaking slashed my hands open several times. And then it just got to a point to where it was like something stepped in. It's like my body was like, no, don't make that same stupid move and cut yourself again. Stop doing it, you know? And now it's like something's
You're gonna lose a finger someday.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not on wood because, you know, it's been a while, but you know, it definitely seems like something lower than my my will is kind of at that play.
Well, the old mantra of train until the mind forgets and the body remembers.
Say it again, Jordan. I'm sorry.
The old mantra of train until the mind forgets and the body remembers. The physical meditation aspect, and that's about the long path walk that you do. After a while, the steps become cadence and rhythm, and you may be looking where you're going so you don't get bit by a snake or step off a ledge, but you start to, in a sense, lose yourself in that way that getting lost is consciously unconscious in a way, which is very moon card.
Yeah, or you drive somewhere and you get there and you realize, like, how the hell did I even get here? I wasn't even paying attention. Skip, we can't hear you.
Skip, we can't hear you.
Why you're not letting me in?
Yes, I wondered. I saw you move and then you stopped earlier. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to introduce something new, which is the Tree of Life by Israel Regardie. And there's some comments in here that relate to the moon that I want to mention to you. And I can only highly recommend this book, okay, in order to understand the world and understand the issues that we're talking about. But let me just give you some pieces of it. First of all, one modern authority states that the upper strata of the astral light, two or more objects may occupy the same space at the same time without interfering with one another or losing their outlines. And so I think that what he's talking about here is having, you know, being physically here physically is Skip and the camera is pointed at me, but also I can be in another place that all of you don't even know about. And those two Skips are in different locations. And of course, most of us are in a different location all the time, wishing that we were having our Christmas instead of sitting here talking to one another, maybe. But anyway,
I don't know. I think I'd rather be doing this.
let me read a couple of other things. Historically, the goddesses presiding among the ancients over childbirth were goddesses of the moon, and hence the astral light. The moon is thought of among such races as possessing great power to quicken the growth of life, plants, and all vegetation than the sun itself. It has always been considered as the planet of change, of generation, and of fertility. Now, I want to go on further. Astrologically, the moon is the planet symbolizing change and flux, the continual alterations of forms, the shifting of conditions. On the astral, this is what makes Logos people crazy, because they'd rather have everything in concrete so nothing changes, right? But on the astral plane, the trained vision has recorded that forms change their shape, color, and size there in the most extraordinary way.
Would you mind just repeating that last sentence slowly? I'm trying to pay attention and I think I missed something.
Okay. I'm not sure what the last sentence is because I've been skipping. The moon is considered the planet of change, of generation, and fertility. The trained vision has recorded that forms change their shape, color, and size there in the most extraordinary way. And to the novice, it is a most disconcerting and puzzling phenomenon to have one set of perceptions fade away under one's very nose, to be replaced by another shifting of scenes to which the same fate very soon often after occurs. It is a fluctuating kaleidoscope of the phenomenon of the figures, forms, and energies being never for one moment quiescent. The sphere of Luna in the tree of life is placed immediately under the Tifereth, the sphere of the sun, thus reflecting the creative forces from above. Now, here's a paragraph that contains 6 words that I found profound, and I'm going to share what they are with you. The words are nature as the great magical agent. And so one of the things I want to emphasize here is that when we're talking about the major arcana, or even the minor arcana, we're talking about nature. Okay, you may have seen the movie Pollock, where Pollock is painting on the wall, and his wife, Lee Krasner, comes up behind him and she says, but Jackson, you have to refer to something in nature. And he said, I am nature. Okay, that was his answer. And so when we're talking about the tarot as a magical agent, we're not talking about woo-woo magic. We're talking about magic that relates to everybody's body, everybody's physical being all the time. Okay. And I'm going to teach everybody something that some of you may not know. Others in this group, I assume everybody knows, but I taught it to Nick this afternoon and he didn't know it. So, and it relates to the astral plane. So I want to show it to everyone. But let me read this a little bit more here, because there's an interesting point here about the Egyptians. And this relates to whether the tarot comes from the time of Egypt or only from the 14th century. In the legends of every people, even the most primitive savage tribes, there enters the conception of the astral light as the medium of thought vibrations and of magical acts. Sir J.G. Fraser, the eminent anthropologist and authority on folklore, records a number of them in The Golden Bough. A number of others have also discussed the nature of this hypothetical force recognized by the primitives without having approached to any clear formulation of the nature of nature as the great magical agent. This could hardly be expected, inasmuch as their studies and researches never for an instant left the academic plane. The Melanesians of the South Sea Isles believe, as Professor Malinowski records in his booklet on myths, in a storehouse or reservoir of supernatural or magical force, which they have called mana, and like a similar force conceived as orenda by the North American Indians, is believed to have its center on the moon. The latter seems to contain a huge tank, as it were, of this occult power, which would appear to be associated by them with the source of life and energy. Now, remember earlier I was talking about the archetypes as being a way to have access to the source of life and energy. Not difficult is it to see that this conception, whether imperfectly recorded by the anthropologists or inaccurately described by the primitives, it is hard to say. The probability is that the fault lies with both parties. This conception, I say, is a very vague formulation of that reality, which in magic we call the astral light. Now, when he's talking about magic, he's actually talking about these systems by which we can release our energies and get contact with the archetypal level.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate how it's been, hold on, let me take a pause. I know I came late today and no one's holding the card. I appreciate how it talks about, what's that? The fault in both parties, like you need a balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All that.
Okay, so I'm going to skip a big piece of this. Well, no, I guess I won't. It was recognized quite clearly, however, by the Egyptian theurgists. What's a theurgist?
A theurgist is basically, it's the idea that a supernatural or divine force works in human affairs. So we would call that self. They're calling that inner divinity.
Right. Okay. And in connection therewith, one is troubled by no vague theories or descriptions, for we observe that almost every yard of the so-called upper and underworlds, Amentet and the Tuat, which are the two aspects, inferior and superior, of the astral plane, is carefully mapped out and its qualities noted. Not only so, but in some of the chapters of the Book of the Dead, now this is the Egyptian Book of the Dead, each subdivision is described with precision for the benefit of the deceased, and incidentally for the theurgists, together with the names of the guardians and the watchers of the pylons, which through which the defunct soul had to pass in order to gain admission to some other of the halls of the kingdom of Osiris. In repeating the Egyptian view, Budge quotes the Tuat was not considered underground nor in the sky or on its confines, but it was located on the borders of the visible world, that it was not a particularly happy place. It described in the Book of the Dead, as described in the Book of the Dead, when the scribe Ani arrived there, seemingly bewildered. There is neither water nor air there. Its depth is unfathomable. It is as dark as the darkest night, and men wander about here hopelessly. A final observation from the venerable keeper of Egyptian antiquities in the British Museum is that of the Tuat was a region of destruction and death, a place where the dead rotted and decayed a place of abomination and horror and terror and annihilation, that this coincides perfectly with the inferior astral spheres of disintegration, or kama loka, goes without saying. And then here's where this connects in with the tarot. The divine astral was known as the kingdom of Osiris, or Amentet, also named the island of truth, whither no soul could be conveyed after his decease until after he had declared true of word, had been declared true of word by the gods of the great reckoning. One corner of this region was specially set apart for the dwelling place of beatified souls, where Osiris, as the god of truth, was the hope and eternal consolation of the spiritually minded. Theosophically, Amentet could be named Devachan, the abode of the gods, and from a theurgic viewpoint, it would occupy that part of Azoth which we have termed the divine astral. According to the Book of the Dead, there are 7 great halls and 21, here's the kicker, 21 pylons giving entry to this celestial region. To each of the 21 pylons, there being 2 sacred watchers or guardians. In another portion of this book, the names of the heralds and doorkeepers, together with the formulae of practical magic by which they may be overcome, and an entry effected to the island of truth, are given at some length, so very precise in their thinking were the Egyptian magicians that they imagined correspondences between the various divisions of Egypt and the metaphysical realms of the Tuat and Amentet.
When can I ask a question?
One more sentence.
Okay, thank you.
Each of the several strata or reasons in
Raquel's laughing at me.
No, I'm not laughing at you.
Raquel is being mean to me. Okay, I'll listen for one more sentence and then I get to ask a question.
Each of the several strata or regions in the astral world, both gross and divine, was mapped out with a precision which even today has neither rival nor equal. Okay, I'll stop there for the moment.
I'm just teasing Raquel. Okay, so you keep repeating, there's a name, there's a goddess. Is it a goddess name that I haven't been familiar with? There were a lot of words, but yeah. I was wondering if you could talk more about the archetypal meaning of, like you said, Amentet.
Amentet and Tuat were the above world and the lower world, or consciousness and the unconscious, if you will.
Okay, because Amentet, kind of reminds me of
Shamatha. Astral.
Samantha, or the name.
I want to emphasize astral here. Okay.
The astral.
All right. Because, and the reason I want to do it is because everyone can see the astral plane, but most people don't see it because they haven't been taught to see it. Okay. And so what I'm going to do right now is teach you how to see it. Because, for example, Samantha, I can see the aura around your head right now. It's quite a dramatic, large aura. Okay. And no, it's real. Okay. it is real. I'm going to prove it to you. Are you ready? I'm going to prove it to you. Okay. So what you do is, preferably against a backdrop that's white or dark, put your fingers like this and move them up and down, keeping your fingers apart.
Are you trying to make me look like a fool?
Well, I'm making myself look like a fool. But what you see, if you focus at the tips of your fingers, is there will be a bridge of light between your fingers, okay? And it actually goes up and down. So as my finger goes up or down, this bridge of light changes direction.
I'm going to do it now.
Okay. And if you can't see it now, I mean, you can see it all through your apartment because
Does
you
it
have a
mean I
lot of white.
failed if I
white-
can't see it?
You will see it.
Say, will you? Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on, you guys. Thanks for paying attention to me, everybody. Okay, I cannot see myself, but I can see all of you right now. Okay,
Okay.
so you're gonna look at me, looking at me. Okay, I have a white background. And
Right. Hold your hands out at arm's length.
I'm gonna turn the
And
light a
move
little
them up
down.
and down.
It has to be against a white background.
Doesn't have to be because it's always there, whether it's against a white background or not. But it's most obvious if you have either a white or a black background or a dark
Does there have to be
single
light
color,
shining on it?
a single colored background. Okay. And if you can't do it that way, then when you go to bed tonight, usually most people have a single colored ceiling color. Okay. And
Yeah.
so hold your hands up while you're lying in bed and do it against the ceiling. And even with the lights off, you will see this light. Okay. That's the point. And so I promise you will see it if you allow yourself to see it. Now, I'm not saying that that's the astral plane, but it is certainly astral. Okay, Nick, have you been able to see it since I described it to you this afternoon?
No, but I haven't experimented with it. I will. Give me a week to report back to you. I'm not going to try to do this now, but
Okay.
I will do my experiments with it.
Okay.
While we're on the topic of the astral, though, there are several things that I would like to comment on, if I may.
Okay.
Okay, so the astral world, as much as it might be what you're talking about with light or what have you going between fingers, the astral world has just as much to do with what I was talking about with the self-image. That's what I based all of that idea on.
Sure.
It's just like we have the image of our body, who we are in the physical world.
Right.
We have the image of ourselves in our mind, and that's the real astral world.
Right.
And also the reason that all of these different occult, esoteric, hermetic authors talk about the astral world as being also it relates to the world of swords that we were talking about, which is such a difficult suit in the tarot. That is the suit of the astral world.
That's like
they talk about it as being full of, quote, astral garbage, of it being full of spirits that are not worthy of communication with the person seeking out communication with higher beings. So this is what I have to say about that. Not necessarily what I have to say, but what comes to mind is 1 John 4:1. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world.
Right.
And they're talking about how, I mean, in the
that's
Bible, but also these authors about how just in this world of the mind, there are all these different forces at play, and they're pretty much like spirits, and they're not all good. You shouldn't trust every thought that you have in the actual world.
And that actually was Jung's favorite quote, I think, from the Bible.
Yeah. And also the thing that comes to mind is like, this whole idea of the image of oneself and how it relates to bodily health. There's a Kabbalistic correlate called the Selim, and there's a wonderful talk that I will send you guys by this guy named Gershom Shalom, where he talks about the Selim, and it's essentially just this concept of an image that people have of themselves, and it also relates to Adam as being the image of the anthropos, or the perfected man.
Yeah.
How everybody who's striving in health is really striving to achieve this unity or this identification with Adam, the perfect man.
You lost me at that part, because I mean, if you could be a little clearer, I think I understand.
It might be vague because you didn't hear all the stuff that I said leading up to where we're at now. But just to be clear, the whole spiel that I gave was on self-image and how every person has there's the way that I see you, right? But then there's also the way that you see yourself as an internal image, like if somebody who has a really inflated sense of self, they probably see themselves as being awesome and great and more attractive than they actually are. And, all of that stuff. Or if somebody has a really deflated sense of self, they probably see themselves as like, oh, I could never do that, or any, like just a defeating self-image and how it relates to health.
Say that last part. I talked over you.
I was just laying all that out and saying that there's a direct correlation between your self-image and the health of your body.
Well, I think it comes down to being right-sized, right? Because other people is it okay if I
Yeah, go ahead.
But is it helpful to the group? I don't want to just go off.
No, go ahead.
Okay. There's how you see yourself, and then there's how people see you. And it can be very humbling to see that other people, it doesn't always match, and sometimes they're right, sometimes you're right. But I think it's like.
Okay, so Samantha, I'm sending you a screenshot of your own aura right now.
Am I going to dematerialize if I see this?
No.
Okay. Because I don't know, but I'm ready for that, Skip.
It's a real concern, though.
Yeah, I mean, the point is that there's more to see. I mean, there's nothing. Look, the halo around Christ's head was an aura. Okay, what I'm talking about right now, and so, these things are there. They're quite visible,
Show it.
But most people don't see them because they either get blinded by how bright the light is. Okay, like Nick this afternoon pulled up a lamp, and then I couldn't see the aura around his head. So I've sent it to you. You can look for it. But what I did was I sent you a screenshot, and in that screenshot, I've actually taken a picture of it.
Did you email me?
I emailed it to you.
Okay, I would like to look at it now, if I may.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah.
There's also one other point that I meant to include in the last thing that I was saying, but I got lost in it. But it's you mentioned that I don't remember the quote exactly, but something along the lines of nature is the true magical agent, or the astral light, something like that. And I think it's really interesting because, we're in the card, we're talking about there are these three kingdoms: the inorganic mineral kingdom, the vegetable, the plant kingdom, and then the animal kingdom, and then there's the human kingdom. But there's also this idea that's echoed out in alchemy as well, is that, alchemy is fundamentally a human consciousness serves as a catalyzation force within the process of nature, that all things are tending towards perfection already. Gold exists in the world already, although it just took 1 million years to become gold. But with human consciousness intervening and playing a role in the process of perfection that's already inherent in nature, we speed up that process. So it's like nature's already moving towards perfection, and we can really just move alongside with that process and speed it up tenfold.
It's important to I think I just lost the thought. I think I'd rather listen.
Okay. Well,
but I saw the picture.
Okay, the reason I show you the aura is to show you that there's something that's always present that you've never seen before. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to.
That's true.
You need to do it. You need to play with it against your bedroom ceiling in the dark. Okay, in the dark, until you do see it, because that will tell you that it is something that's there, and it's part of the energy that is around our bodies, as Nick was properly saying, and nature is the true magical agent. Okay. And so this aura appears in many images of Christ because it's the halo, and of the Virgin Mary and so on. And I have no doubt that they had huge auras, because people who are spiritually adept, let's say, do tend to have very large auras. And when somebody's in a convention or something, and they're just giving a speech about something they really believe in, then you can see all kinds of colors around their head. And it doesn't have to be about the spiritual realm. But it's harder to see when you have a lot of activity around your head. Like, you can't see it in my picture, Nick's or Raquel's, because it's too busy. But you can see it a bit on Nicole's image, with the dark.
It's a little much, Nicole. Could you turn it down just a little bit? You got it. You got it.
Okay. But the point is that there are things that we don't necessarily see, and so that's all I'm going to say about it, I guess.
I think it's also really interesting that you, I don't remember exactly in what context, but I think I have the meaning of what they're saying is they refer to the idea of mana or mana. And that also is kind of like this magical agent, because it's
right.
It's
precisely
it's the dew that falls from heaven, just like the dew falling from this moon in the card, just like all these drops of life force. But really, symbolically, what is meant by mana is that when you take a dream, for example, you have a dream, and that dream exerts some really powerful influence on you, no matter what the dream. The influence is the mana. It's that archetypal energy that's released from having this energy and makes it effective. It's
right. And we talk about mana from heaven. That's exactly what it is. It's the archetypes releasing energy into you so that you have the mana to be fierce in a battle, let's say, or cook a good meal.
I can do that. I can be fierce in a battle. Sorry, I feel moved to speak.
Yes, speak.
Pardon me. Well, I remember our talk where you was like, politics, schmolitics, you know what I mean? But I find myself wanting to talk about that, and I know we all as a group had a long, deep discussion, so I just want to make sure, is that okay, or should I hold it?
No, go ahead, just go.
Talking politics. Well, okay, I'm gonna
to a limited extent.
Okay, well, you were talking about
as long as you don't pull us off the ledge.
I don't think so. If I do, I know someone will stop me. I trust that someone will stop me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kamala Harris. So my friend was telling me how he didn't say what image it was, but he works with archetypes, as part of his therapeutic healing. And he somehow the topic of Kamala Harris came up, and I was saying how I like her, and the moon, she has a certain femininity about her, and she's also fierce, like a warrior, if you will. And he was saying to me, you should find a picture of her, tape her on the wall, and just there's meditations you can do. But so that's just so funny that came up at this moment. I'm not saying I look like her per se or whatever. I mean, there's parallels in terms of my own consciousness, I imagine. I don't know her personally, but yeah.
We totally get you. I don't want to speak for everybody too much, but I think that's well understood for sure.
Right.
People can certainly serve as a symbol for the self. We first recognize it out of ourselves.
Sure.
Well, and I would say too, Pallas Athena or Minerva, however how you want to call it, she's a warrior for education. Education is sexy, and Pallas is like the ultimate strategist. So when you take Kamala, I mean, she's very much that Pallas. She'd make Mars look like he's playing checkers to her chess. So that's a wonderful, and maybe even to her three-layer chess. And so that's a great image, Samantha. Especially with her.
I was actually disappointed that she was picked to be vice president because I wanted her to be attorney general.
AG would be right. That's
right,
true.
But
it doesn't wait, AG?
Attorney General.
Oh yeah, thanks. It doesn't hurt that she's easy on the eyes. I'm just saying, but I know that that's not what it's all about. I'm well aware of that. Okay.
Well, it doesn't hurt that Joe Biden is easy on the eyes too. So
what a looker.
I mean,
no orange hair is easy on the eyes.
Well, at least he doesn't look like Carl Jung at his age.
Get your head out the gutter, Skip.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to show some more cards here. Okay, so I'm going to show some more cards because we're talking about the moon card tonight.
She's more than that. That's all I'm saying, obviously. Obviously, she's more than that, but that is an example of how you use all your talents and tools to your advantage, because while you have a conception of yourself, other people have a conception of you.
Right. And other people have a conception of this card too. So
the fact that she's mixed is useful. I mean, for what she represents to the country, yada, yada, blah. Okay, fine. But
okay, actually, there is a human here, Nick.
Yeah. There's also the Hebrew letter Kaf down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it?
The Hebrew letter.
Kaf. K-A-P-H.
Oh, that's Kaf. This is Kaf. It's a Q.
Oh
God. It's
like a cough.
Okay, so let me read here. This is Devani Wolf from the She-Wolf Tarot deck. And we've enjoyed her comments before, and I'm very much enjoying this water buffalo, I guess is what that is, but whatever. Moon, Pisces, keys, shadow paths, testing, light in the dark, resurrection, and disillusionment is the negative side. Okay, artwork illumination. The moon is illustrated here by the ancient Egyptian goddess Hathor, who represents feminine power, creation, and joy. She is surrounded by Kala lilies, symbolizing resurrection beyond the dark night. She holds in front of her a disc with the 19th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Kaf, the destroyer of illusions. She sits on a spiral void, an element of chaos and unpredictability. Okay, so she's sitting on the void. On the light side, quote, he who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. This Friedrich Nietzsche quote comes to mind when considering the moon. With this card, we are being tested. We are taken far beyond the light of the star into the darkest night. What we find here, we usually strive to avoid. The shadow self in all of its manifestations lays there in the shadows precisely because we don't like it. We are ashamed of it. If we become afraid along the journey, we can remind ourselves of the simple fact that the shadow is simply a part of us that needs a little love too. We can afford it. We can afford it that. We can give it space. It is our judgment of it that makes it bad or scary, when really it's just simply is. And the shadow side, we may be lost in the labyrinth of the underworld. We may continue to reject and shun these aspects of ourselves to the point of panic and self-destruction. If we find ourselves facing our shadow, the best thing we can do is breathe into it and give it a smile. There is a lot to be said for manifesting friendly energies, even with the most unpleasant parts of who we are. Mantra, my shadow needs love too.
You know, I feel like should I spread this around? Like, I haven't heard from Nicole or Raquel, but I do have a lot to say about this, I think.
Okay, well, let's give Raquel and Nicole a chance, and then we'll come back to the lot you have to say, Samantha. Nicole, what do you have to say here?
Well, I'm having difficulty getting my personal stuff out of the way because there's so much symbology and stuff that's been happening. And I'm just, I don't know enough about Thoth, but I'm intrigued by that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just see so much symmetry in this card, like it's the portal to the fifth dimension.
Yeah.
Because it's got the duality of the real world, the physical world, and it's showing us in these visual symbols a way through to a higher level of consciousness. But it's also talking about the dangers, which is really like
we have to sit on it.
What dangers?
freaking me out. And yeah, like, but I'm just so drawn to this card because I see a lot of those in here where I live at the moment. I see a lot of those taxidermied bulls. I've seen a few, one in particular, and I've got a few friends that have got those, that have those in their homes. And yeah, and it is a, when you have those things around you, it does have an impact. Like what Samantha was saying about putting that woman's picture on the wall. Like, we access the archetypes through the body. It's not just an intellectual process. And what comes to mind is I hear a lot of guys struggling, whatever, talking about letting go of the ego, and I always say, no, don't do that. Access the archetypes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I don't know, it's something powerful. Yeah.
Do what you gotta do.
Go on, Nick.
Do what
Well,
you
the
gotta
ego is a strong vessel, and then you keep the strong ego, but you don't focus on just the superficiality of the vessel.
As long as it's in service to something.
Yes.
That's what I mean. That's what like actors do and performers do. Is you have a talent that you cultivate for a purpose, but it's for the audience, and it might be enjoyable to the actor, and it might not be. But it's on that night, with the ego you're talking about. But you integrate the ego is what I understand. That's one thing I want to say. The other thing I want to say, if I may, is that, hold on, I lost it and now it's coming back. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. But hold on. It was about, the shadow. That in a way, I'm riffing here. But somehow it seemed important to state, cut me off if it's not, but something about like, there's this phrase, hiding, like an open secret or something, like basically, if you wear some of that on your sleeve, you know what I mean? No one can harm you because you are, no one can really harm you, is what I want to say. I can explain more if you'd like, but that's what I'm getting so far. That's part of the, I'm petering out. That's part of the integration. Like, there's certain things that I could.
I have a point that I want to make to Nicole.
Other people can't hurt you with it if you lead with it. What do you guys think? Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something in reply to what you said, Nicole.
Lead with it, but you know.
There's a phenomenal book that kind of goes along the topic, similar to what you're saying, called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
Yes.
It's a phenomenal book, and the whole premise is essentially that there is a mature expression of masculinity, and there's an immature expression of masculinity. And I know that, speaking just for people in my generation, I know several, kind of, for lack of a better term, like left-leaning men that are all about like, oh, I want to renounce my ego because there's such a large-scale attack on like immature masculinity. And I think, for a lot of people to arrive at that conclusion is essentially, I mean, that to me results in complete annihilation of a person. I don't think it's so much that you need to renounce the ego, which is also immature masculinity, but that you need to, just transform it into something that's really mature, rather than just renouncing it and being like,
Yeah, that's what
I want to kill my ego.
There's part of its time because it's like integrating opposites.
Yeah.
And knowing when to pick your battles. I'm definitely, in my own individuation, I'm definitely learning that, especially in the last like week. You know what I'm saying? Like being the left and the right, you know what I mean? It's like, it took me a long time to figure this out, but like you can't be too yin either. So I get that. So I used to take offense at a bleeding heart liberal, but now I kind of understand. And I'd have to go into my personal stories about that. And I know this isn't the Samantha show, but
yeah.
But I hear there's always a unifying principle too.
On the Samantha show.
There's always a unifying principle between left and right, or American and
we're all one country.
African or whatever. I mean, we've all got the same blood that flows through our veins, so
True.
who really cares?
Well, the ego is also vessel.
My grandma was a Republican on my dad's side, but that was different. Anyway, history.
I want to say something too about this card. Can I?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you.
About this card. Okay, go ahead.
We're not all American.
I mean,
Here.
what I'm going to say is also related to my background in some way, but most of the moon cards that we have here is also portrayed as animals, so, but not only in a sense of like rescuing the animal side of yourself, but to see nature as a part of yourself as well, not just in a sense of recognizing that the nature has power or magic, but you are an integrating part of it. Because in my background, I have indigenous blood from my mother's side. My great-grandmother was indigenous from the region of Brazil that I'm from, and from very early ages, I've learned that I learned to respect nature in a sense of like kind of a hierarchy in some level, because nature came before me. Nature comes first, So I've always was taught that every time that I kind of like hurt a tree or hurt a bug, that energy will flow through me, So I was taught to respect nature in a broader sense, like as a child, and knowing this and seeing this card right now with the bullhead, in a woman, it's kind of like not just in a shadow sense of like integrating the parts of yourself that you don't like, or that you don't know, or that you don't acknowledge, but also like knowing that there's this like,
I'm a Taurus.
I don't know how to say it. I think it's kind of like retrieve power from that flow, It's not just like, it's something that scares you because we are taught to not recognize as an equal, in a sense of like, we use nature. Nature is for us, you know, but nature also can use us, you know, when you put in equal levels, in a sense. And
Yeah,
I think that cards represent that a little bit better than the others, because the bull it's inside the woman, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
Nick, were you going to say something?
just very quickly, that's a phenomenal point, because it absolutely is a symbiotic relationship between us and nature. And we in America could really stand to have a strong dose of that knowledge, because nature is not necessarily something to be dominated, but something to work with.
That's a good
And in this card, the nature is the head, you know, so you're gonna think with a nature's head. That is important as well, I think.
Mhm. Yes, indeed.
I kind of got lost there, but what I'm hearing is archetypally, right? When I look at this image, I think, okay, there's a woman with a naked body. Focus. Anyway, she has a bull on her head. And to me, I just associate that with my own ego. Like I'm a Taurus, you know what I mean? But there's also strength to it. It's Tauruses are loyal, plodding, you know, like the bull. They're strong, you know. But I guess, yeah, that's anyway, hold on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
May I point out two things on this
Yeah.
card?
Okay.
The I mean, if I name this bull, her name is Brahmana, you know, capital B, Brahmana, the Brahma, but the Brahmana is the priestess, and you have the cobra on the head, which is the Uraeus, the Egyptian Uraeus, cobra coming out of the third eye, which is the top of the Kundalini. And I think Raquel's point and Nicholas's point earlier about the bodily intelligence comes fully together with just where the Hebraic symbol is placed, because there's a golden disc there, and it's not just over the solar plexus at the top, which is where all of our nature connection energy and strength and power emanate to and from, but at the top of that would be the solar plexus, right under the xiphoid, the little triangular bone at the bottom of your stomach, or bottom of your sternum. But at the bottom of this circle would also be the Tantien, Tantien, or otherwise known as the Hara, or the 1 point. And it's 2 acu-inches below the belly button. And it's the other full higher mind center that's down in the sacral region. So I think that this card is also celebrating that solar plexus energy that animals naturally contain, emanate, and hold back their power at will.
Yeah, like we learned that lesson from the wands. Like I think, at least in the mother piece, I think it's the 10 of wands or something. Depends on the deck, but so wands represent energy, creativity, sexuality.
Right.
You know, and a lot of us there's containment that is required, right? Discernment in order to produce something beautiful, helpful, productive, because instead of being like addictive about it or careless.
Yes, that's well said. Especially that containment to make beauty. It's not a quick fix that gets a shallow root, like you said. Discerning, containing. You have to really work with it or hold it for it to cure and become something else.
Right. Okay. I want to move on to another one, but there were a couple of comments here. Penelope Ryder, who's a friend of mine and an astrologer in the UK, says, well, first of all, Curtis Chrisman says, truth burns up error. Penelope then says, it takes time to process trauma. To me, I hurt for many years. Childhood trauma causes a split in the psyche and a false self. And then Magic Sufi says female cows don't have horns. I'm not sure that that's right, because
well, and also with archetype, we're not dealing with reality. There's fantastical. So this is
right.
The horns are also in a priestess crescent moon posture.
We also have a visitor here on YouTube called Catherine's Tarot. So I'm just offering a welcome to Catherine. Okay, I'd like to move on to the Starman Tarot version of the moon. And before I read his divination advice, I want to read his general description of this, because it's also is good, and it's somewhat different from what we've been hearing before. Okay, so the moon signifies journeying within to the pool of inner wisdom the subconscious inhabits. The moon is the light that shines in the darkness, and her waxing and waning mirror the movements and tides of our emotions. Seen here, she is the woman in the moon, shining her gentle light over the waters below. The moon is in synchronous rotation with the earth. This means the same side is always facing the earth, and the gravitational pull of the moon creates the two bulges on the earth, which move around the oceans as the earth rotates, causing this familiar high and low tides. Women's menstruation cycles often harmonize with the cycles of the moon. And in the times of goddess worship, more than 5,000 years ago, women would often bleed together on the new moon, considered an auspicious, deeply creative and spiritual period of release. Then ovulation occurred at the height of their creative release during the full moon. Living life can be a very lonely path at times, especially when we are transitioning from the old to the new. The path unknown before us can be laden with projected fears and fantasies of loss and failure. But the moon card suggests to look a little deeper and face your fears. It is a time to retreat and reflect, attentive to the synchronicities and symbolic wisdom in the outer world, reflecting in the mirror of the inner world. Allow insights and guidance to surface in your dreams, and keep your dream diary ready. Remember, we can feel our most desperate or despondent in the darkness, given to flights of imagination, twisted fears, and fantasy. As mistress of illusion, the dreaming self, she holds both the keys and the spells. Deep forgotten memories may be disturbing your equilibrium. Past traumas resurfacing once again to experience the light of consciousness, the healing spiral. You thought you were resolved, but up it comes again to be purified. Journey within with the power of guided visualization, and like the three ethereal water bearers in the card, receive her wisdom. Success in any venture always carries fear, as it does hope. The two sides of the same coin. Darkness cannot exist without light, light without dark. Embrace your fears. Reversed, buried memories may be unraveling, spawning an overactive imagination as you consider a new phase of your journey. Have courage. Danger does not lurk at every corner. You must go on. Look to the moon, the pathway of healing, compassion, and self-care. Ground yourself with fresh, nourishing, and preferably whole foods, and a physical practice such as yoga, Pilates, or Tai Chi that attends to the body. Allow water to purify you of negativity and fear. And
so, Nick, did you write this book?
So basically, hydrate. That's why I came to this. Okay,
The healthy food.
Jokes aside, you
And
know,
a little Whole Foods plug in there too.
I thought that was
strawberries and protein bars, and this is the best I could do because I thought this is more important. I wanted to come back, you know, and not take a whole long time. But on the subject of trauma, not to trigger, as the liberals like to say, trigger alert. But from my observation, people who go through trauma, it can be with the right support and training, and like you said, take it step by step, sit with it. Is this what you really want to do? Like you really want to go look at that stuff, and then I get that, but that being said, it's sort of like a bone breaking in a sense. They can grow back stronger. It's like people who've experienced cruelty can, well, that's a lot. I'm not going to read that at this time. I'm going to finish my thought. But people who experience cruelty can be very compassionate. Like that's more of a kind of vague, easy example, but there's many other ways it plays out. So yeah, it's a process. But I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm open to that process.
Yeah, I believe that empathy, for instance, it's something that comes from suffering and not from actually, just loving, people and the world and whatever. It comes from suffering.
You also can't be naive. Like I know someone recommended a movie to me that I saw most of. I think there were 50 more minutes left when I put it away. But it's like being taken advantage of for your kindness, your trusting nature. I don't know about you guys. I have had that happen. So I think that's part of the trauma discernment. So it has to be like mutually beneficial. What am I trying to say? Yeah. Right? I mean, what am I trying to say? Nick, what am I trying to say?
I don't know, but one of the
well, it sounds like you're looking at reciprocality. You want to make sure that it's a two-way street with you and right.
One of the key words that I was trying to just keep going over and keep using was understanding. And I mean, that was my attempt at a pun to do with feet and understanding, but also but
yeah, you get some good punitive damages for that one.
Also because that's what Binan means on the tree of life. This up here means understanding. And if you think about what understanding is, really, it's a very strange concept to just kind of pour over for a little bit, because there's the thing that comes to mind for me are like those aha moments where you just suddenly get it. It's like, you experience maybe some kind of cognitive dissonance or something, to where all of the lines just aren't matching up in the way that you're thinking about something, and then some piece just suddenly falls into place, and it's like, I understand now. I got it. I get it. And I think that empathy can kind of be described in a similar way, as it's not so much like a detached thoughtfulness, but it's like it's truly comes from a place of understanding, in the sense that you may have been through the exact same thing, but it's a little more than just to say, like, I intellectually can understand what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
Well, like Samantha said, the broken bone heals stronger. And so when you resolve trauma, you create a connection, which is golden splendor, rather than a scar, which is motion limiting. So you can make connections with healed trauma instead of just being stuck.
Hey, can you put that image back up
in the chat? Anyway, all I wanted to say is that, like, sometimes when you've been through a lot, it's like if you make fun of yourself, or like, let's say a kid gets bullied or whatever, and then they grow up and like other people can use certain things that seem on the nose, like for me, someone could mention like my race, or only if they know it bothers me, or what I mean, like whatever, you're too tall, or you're too whatever it is, you're too, and it can get to you. But if you've kind of grown up with being desensitized to it, it can like not hurt you anymore, but again, it takes support, training, all the modalities, and you have to,
I think
that's what
I think, at least in my personal case, that there are two poles to that, because I know really, like, obviously we've all had our own individual traumas, and they're all different from one or the other. But I know that there are several things that I've been through amongst friends and things, just that without going into detail, got very, very ugly. And now it's something that we can kind of laugh about and be like, oh yeah, we were so stupid. I can't believe we got into all that stuff. And it's like, I think that, it can definitely hit on a sore spot sometimes and bring back the bad stuff. But I think also it can kind of turn it into something that's a little bit funnier. Like, there's, as I've said several times, there's a trickster component to somebody holding up a mirror to the ways in which you can be ridiculous about something. Not you personally, but the general you.
Well,
Yeah, can you pull up that image again? I have something I want to see if everybody else relates to.
Which the image from
The David Bowie.
Okay, well, I was hoping to move on to just a minute.
It won't take very long. I mean, it's not even anything.
Okay.
It's not even a talking point. I just want to see if anybody sees the symbol of Pisces in there.
Okay, just a minute. I have to find it.
Well, Skip is finding it. I mean, I have questions.
All right, ask the questions.
What I'm in too deep. Am I in too deep? I basically mean, I don't know. I feel like everyone here has like more experience,
More experienced about what?
Fire away. What do you have to ask?
Yeah, your perspective is valuable. I mean, in fact, you often come up with really, really strong stuff that none of us would come up with. I mean, it helps. Fire away.
Okay, I might need some time. Might have to take time away from class as well, just to figure out, but I can try. I was just wondering, I feel like everyone here is so enlightened in a lot of ways, about that consciousness. What was the word? I had a meeting, we talked about Skip.
Let me just cut through that illusion and say we are not.
I'm not enlightened.
You're not?
We're not
I
enlightened.
take leave.
How would I know?
Only me.
There's nobody here that's enlightened.
Yeah, only me. Batteries were included. No, we are not.
Well,
Far from it.
well, okay. Well, then I don't know what to say. I guess I should just trust my instincts. But I
Right.
I guess I need to be kind of follow someone's lead here to learn what I need to learn from the group, but I think I already have some of that.
Well, one of the things to learn is that you can take things out of the moon card and out of the shadow.
Oh,
And
does she look like me, or is it just me?
yeah, she looks like you. Okay, Nick, what are the things you wanted to point out here?
It kind of looks like Natalie Portman in the moon a little bit. But anyways, I was just curious. There is a symbol in this card of Pisces, but it's just, I'm just wondering if anybody else sees it, because I think it's absolutely brilliant, and it's something I've done some writing on.
I don't
myself.
know. I don't know.
Is it in the center above the woman's head?
Yeah, the two circles.
Yeah. And I love the skull above that of a creature of some kind. I don't know what it is.
Like a cow skull.
So it's the vesica Pisces.
You stole the word out of my mouth. How did you know that?
Are you talking about these things?
And I love.
No,
the,
he's down at the woman in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, it really speaks about the mask and the way that they divided the head with that black, like that's the shadow in the third eye area. It's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about there.
The decoration on the face almost is like floral, like nature, like plant patterns, but it's also burns, but it's like ugly but pretty. It's really powerful. It's really
yeah.
And that mask
in two circles overlapping is called a vesica Pisces.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the symbol of my business. I don't know if you guys knew that. I assume you did. My reputation precedes.
No, I don't. I'll be interested.
Well, it's also called a mandorla.
Mandorla. And then if you notice the mask,
Looks like a
Not
Venn
the David Bowie face up top, but the masks on the triple below, the eyes are closed.
Yeah.
So and the mask
Yes.
focuses the third eye. So the whole idea is close the two eyes to open the third.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
very
the
good.
three faces has to do with Hecate, the three-faced moon goddess.
Okay, can I ask
Also,
a question? Like, I guess what we talked about wanting to hear people's personal experiences. And I know
Yes.
I'm the only one who's been drawn into something, you know, that am I
Yeah.
sounding like mysterious here, or like are people following? Can I?
So you're asking for a
Just go on.
personal moon experience, basically, that
Go
we.
ahead.
It's like when the clouds are over the moon and you think you're just looking at clouds, and then the clouds part and you see the moon. You can't unsee the moon. So I just want to know how other people, you know, for those who have integrated their shadow and accepted the idea of this greater consciousness, is like, what did you have to integrate? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, well, I can't unsee the full moon of a certain walk I went on with my first wife before we were married on my college campus. I remember that night very well. I have no idea what we talked about, but I remember the moon that night and the fact that we were walking up this hill together. And that was 60 years ago, 55 years ago. Go ahead.
I like that you said unsee, because I hadn't thought about it. I was trying to kind of scrambling in my mind for a moon experience. And right when you said that, it was the top of Mount Democrat when I almost died, middle of the night, no moon. And I remember noticing how much I didn't see the moon. It was very primitive. It's not like I can't see the moon. I was just, why can't I see the moon? So part of that was delirium because I was exhausted. But I remember the thought, looking up in this black sky full of stars and being perplexed, I can't see the moon. And there was something about it that struck me later that was because I am the moon. I was running on overdrive and instinct. And I remember that was one of those no consciousness, just get off the rock, just get down. And that kind of moon integrated in a way.
That has to do also with what?
Go ahead.
Confidence. You know, confidence is, I used to think of confidence as, I mean, I had a bias that I wasn't aware of until I actually realized the true definition of confidence that Nick was speaking about, like, you know, that it is trust. It's not, I have a higher self-esteem than other people. It's really about trust. Like a confidence man, I mean, not, you know, that's the only example I could think of just linguistically. A confidence man does what he does by earning someone's trust. But again, you can integrate that shadow so you can use it for ill or good. You know what I mean? You can earn, it's your choice, you know, and it does take two. It helps to have a group. It helps to have some type, like you're talking about, we all join around the tarot to have this discussion that's so important at this period of time in the world.
Yeah, I think this particular card, this is the Splendor Solis stack. And it's interesting that it is showing the moon in the same space as other things, as the horizon, for example. And it literally has two horizons, and as the river, and perhaps as the sun because it's eclipsing the sun. But I also wanted to mention that you ought to take a look at Tim Holmes's Patreon post for today, because he did a portrait of a woman, but he did it based on the portrait of a woman by 4 different artists. And so the image that comes through is you see 4 different women in one image.
Oh, nice.
Can I just hear what you're saying and get the point?
Well, the point is that in the astral light, you know, more than one thing can occupy the same space.
Image
Right.
is powerful.
Yeah,
I know that very well. I know that. I mean, I get that.
right. Okay,
So I'm
so
I'm enjoying the face in this moon.
yeah, so let me read the passage here. And I'm reading from the Splendor Solis Tarot, Inner Alchemies of Mithraic Light. I am the eclipse, inner alchemy of the moon, ruler of flux and reflux, child of the sons of the mighty. I come that you may dream true, replacing self-deception with bright visions of change. I am artisan of the corporeal intelligence, a consciousness forming each body throughout creation and the reproduction of them. All Venus Earth experiences in the four worlds are woven into my alchemical path. I am the moon's inward vision of rising in perfect alignment between earth and sun, invoking the mysteries of eclipse of my Piscean waters bring thus darkened subtle earth to the dreamlike transparency of the alchemical solutio. Deep down instinctual powers are revealed, moved by the animate occulting moon, who yet wears the sun's golden crown. Dear alchemist, every physical cell is touched by my powers. They work from the hidden side of things, for like the back of the head, they are seen only when mirrored into images. Here, where one nature rules another without hurt or pause, my healing operation of sleep nightly dissolves mundane consciousness into the dream. Prepare well for sleep. The moon will teach lucidity, bringing you to my treasure house as an adept, able to release images from illusion into their true and beautiful forms. And I'll just mention a personal experience of my own that some of you know about, which is right after Donald Trump was elected president, I had a dream which was followed by an act of imagination. And in that act of imagination, there was a throng of Ku Klux Klan members in front of me. And
Oh God.
and the sheriff, as Moses came out and raised his arm, and this sea of Ku Klux Klansmen separated, and down the path between the two rows, or the two streams of Klansmen, was an eclipse like this, a dark eclipse of the sun by the moon, just like this, actually. But I could see that the eclipse would only last for a short period of time and it would move away. And so then the next scene was I was in a meadow that was a sunny meadow and everything was hunky-dory. And so, but I actually had this dream with the Klansmen on both sides.
Do you remember, Skip? That resonates.
Mm-hmm.
It's disturbing, but it resonates. Let me just pause. Let me take that in for a second because that has a lot of implications. Well, okay. I did show up today, so let me put on my game face here. Like, have you seen, you know, when we met and we were talking about movies and stuff, and that one by Spike Lee, where the guy goes undercover? You mentioned the KKK. He goes undercover. He's a black guy who goes undercover.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember the movie. I did not see it.
Black Klansman.
Well, he couldn't really. Someone else used someone else. Okay, so there's Adam Driver, who in the movie, who's a white guy who's actually has a Jewish background, and that's like a side story, right? And then there's I forget the actor's name, but he's the son of Denzel Washington. I think it's Isaiah Washington, I think, and any hoozle. So it's based on a true story too. The guy, the inspiration for the story like was on, okay, let me just pause because I am tired. I will need sleep. But he ends up going undercover with a team. So he was one part of it. So there was the voice of him. So, or no, his voice, they used his voice. There's at one point where he actually does physically, they can see he's a black man, whatever, but that's not my story, or neither here nor there. The point is because of their assumptions, he uses their assumptions to his benefit, or in this case, the FBI, I guess. But yeah, I mean, he was the perfect guy to do it, and I guess wanted to. But that's a decision I guess he had to make, or maybe it was fate, or a combination. I just think we're all on the same side in terms of like, I don't know, you hearing that week after week and like having these discussions is like, we're all ultimately on the same side. And it wasn't just Isaiah Washington's character that got him there. It was also Adam Driver's character. So he shows up in person, and, you know, so it's not a black or white thing. It's like an American thing, you know, or sorry, I mean, no offense to, this is my perspective. This is my understanding of what you're saying, like integrating and paying attention, and, you know, what's the real threat? Where does the real threat come from? You know, and people would have us be divided. People, you know, fools, in my opinion, you know, the fool archetype. And especially right now, I think, I mean, I want to go out, stop me if it's too much, but I think that the biggest, I don't know what you're going through, Raquel or Nicole, but in our country, in a way, it's the same with the ego. The biggest threat can be inside, right? Inside the belly of the beast. And sometimes you have to look at yourself and not just the rest of the world. But
it's also really the only thing that you can do. I mean, we can rant and rave about what everybody else does, but we're the only thing that we have true control over.
Right.
Right.
Okay. I know that Nick wants to get some sleep before his 6 a.m. So what I want to do is quickly share some of the other cards that I have without going into great detail about them, but so that others can see the diversity of the ways that the moon card is represented. And so this card is, these are Melissa Townsend's cards, her 2 decks. The one on the left is the deck that she normally reads from. And it's interesting that here she's got some sort of alligator chasing this man dark man that's walking along the path.
where's the alligator?
Huh?
Oh,
Right
a
there.
oh, I see. And then there's another monster to the right of him.
Right,
To the
there's a monster there too, but he's got a white path up to civilization, right?
left.
So that's an interesting presentation. And then this other one was from her El Ted's deck. So just share it. And let me see if I have some others here, which I
Her
do.
first one, that's a great visual story about the shadow needs love too. The shadow's getting chased there by the alligator in a way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's...
Geez, I'm realizing that I still have cards from the tower.
A message.
Okay, so the next one is going to be the Robert Wang's crazy one. And I think I have to read Robert Wang's short description here because it sounded wacko to me. If I think I have it, maybe not. Okay, we'll pass on Robert Wang because I seem to have dropped it.
It looks maddening. I mean,
Pardon?
it just looks maddening. Like she just.
Yeah, and she's not allowing entrance, right? And
Right.
so for me, his description, which was very short. I'm sorry, I do have it here. I just put his
What do you mean
little book.
allowing entrance?
Okay, this is why I wanted to read this, because it's only 3 sentences, but
She's standing in the way between the pillars. There's no entrance.
yeah, and here's what he says. Archetype of the deadly mother, illusion, deception, dark dreams, and changing moods, a test of the hero. Maternal instinct, menstruation, childbirth, the home, the house, travel and change, rhythm, fantastic visions, welling up in the imagination, blind terror.
Are we all on the same page? I
It-
mean,
Is that not pretty patriarchal to
Well, it actually picks up on something that I debated on discussing or not. But after seeing this card and seeing the alchemical tarot, I'll just try to say something about it. It's a very difficult thing to say anything about because it's not my area of expertise. But in the alchemical tarot, in the Splendor Solis, you see the moon, but the moon is also the part that's above the horizon is black. And there's an idea in alchemy about the black sun.
yes.
And all of these different ideas. And it's a very peculiar notion, a sun being black. And, there are also images of Osiris in a white form and a black form.
what about that song, Black Hole Sun?
And right, yeah, exactly. That's very apt because people also. It makes me think of dark matter, and right, we're talking about this astral agent, this magical agent, and it's like alchemy for the longest time and magic have been talking about essentially what modern physicists now talk about as dark matter.
Right.
Nobody knows what dark matter is. They can't really quantify it or detect it, but they can only kind of like negatively establish the existence of something else which all these other agents travel upon. And,
right.
and the very interesting thing is that like gravity itself might even have a relationship to dark matter.
What do you do?
And dark matter also matter comes from the exact same root as mother. So when he says it's something about the dark mother, a dark matter, and also in the previous card there being the black sun and having to do with dark matter, it seems like they're getting at a similar point, that there's like this regressive gravitational pull to this dark mother.
Some things can defined, some things if we let them be, right? Because sometimes we sometimes the opposite is true, right? Where I was like, it's sort of like if some secrets are open secrets. So like if you just go into a room and you announce like, I'm nervous, like either that can be disarming because everyone can see that and go, oh, you're not, we're all on the same page, and sort of it makes other people relax. On the other hand, you can walk into a room and if you have a spot on your shirt and you say, oh, I have this spot on my shirt, like everyone will start to look at the little spot. So it's up to discernment. And my opinion is, at least where I'm coming in my individualization of my attempting to integrate, say the opposites in me, those seeming opposites. One moment. Is basically I am what I am.
Well, also there's the issue of denial of death here, because this, again, we see a symbol for the yoni here, and the beetle represents rebirth after death. And here she looks like death, but the reality is that we all face death. And
so part of growing up is
and we make a lot of decisions based on avoiding death.
Skip, you bring up a great point with that beetle, because especially here from an Egyptian mythology or an Egyptian mythos, the scarab is actually also a symbolic representation of a top view of the skull. So those 3 angles between the wings across the body are actually the sutures of the skull and how our skull comes together. And then coupled with the snake, the Egyptians thought the snake was so sacred and magical because it was one of the few things that could shed its skin without dying. So there was, again, that resurrection you're talking about.
That's what actors do as well.
Okay, I want to go on now to to Liz Green here. This is the New Mythic Tarot. And I'm just going to read what's around this tarot card without reading her whole shebang here. But she says, the card of the moon portrays a mysterious feminine figure with 3 faces, crowned by a diadem of the moon in its 3 phases. Her hair is silvery, and she is clothed in white robes, which flow into a pool at her feet. Beside her stands a 3-headed dog, while from the depths of the pool, a crab attempts to crawl from the water. The sky behind her is dark, lit only by the luminescence of her crown. And then she says, the 3 faces of Hecate, like the 3 faces of Moira, reflect the inevitable changing phases of life. And white and silver, the colors of Hecate's robes and hair, are associated with the moon because they were believed to contain all colors within them in a nascent state. And the crab is a creature which belongs wholly to neither the water nor the earthy realm, but makes its abode in between. Thus, the crab is an image of the dream world, which arises from the unknown depths, but intrudes upon the day world in the form of powerful images and feelings which cannot be ignored. Okay, so that's what Liz.
The Moira,
Wow.
the Moira
Wow,
piece
that's-
there was really stunning. Moira. I mean, besides just being one of the fates, astrologically, the asteroid Moira is polar to Saturn. So
And she's
instead of-
actually saying Morai here, which means all 3 of the fates.
right. And
Right.
then Moira, the asteroid Moira in astrology is about internal rhythm, internal sense of time, as opposed to chronological time.
Right. Okay, let's
Yeah.
see what it,
There's a lot in the Hecate as well in that
Mhm.
symbology there. And what I was really noticing, it's funny, I do this all the time now. When I was looking at those 2 cards, I saw the black eye of the woman on the left, and it really spoke to me about this pathway into victimology, which I want to solve. And I also saw the 2 and the 3, which is two 3s and 9, which is, does that add up? Hang on, this is 18, right? 1 and 9 is
Yeah.
8.
Yeah.
1 and 8
Yeah.
is 9. So it's 2 3s and 9. So it has a real symmetry in the, because there's 3 heads of the dogs and the woman, but then there's 2 figures there, and then there's the shadow and the moon, and
and they're 9 eyes.
Right. They're 9 eyes.
yeah, it's
And-
really interesting.
Well, and as above, so below, because her crown chakra, the first chakra is the earth chakra, or the 0, which is 18 inches below your feet, centered underneath you. So that's her connection there to, and then back to Nick's bodily intelligence, the earthly intuition.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, so now I want to get on to another group, and we actually will get to Jordan's tonight here, if we're lucky. Okay, so where is my share? Okay, this is I think this is going to give it to me. Let's hope. Right. Okay, so are you seeing this? This seems to be the 5th tarot image, which I
Yes.
rather like, and I'm not going to go into their description, but I think the image is quite nice, and obviously there's a man in the moon here type thing with an eye.
And well, in the cetacean, the whale, very much a lunar kind of creature.
Right. And then this is the Divine Tarot, and this is actually the image that appears on the cover of the Divine Tarot. And then this is the Hermetic Tarot, which is talking about the ruler of flux and reflux.
It's,
And
I also just want to mention one thing that I learned this recently, and I think it may have some relevance to this card. Let's see if we can amplify this in any way. I recently learned that the terms horizon and sunset come from the Egyptian god Horus.
Mm-hmm.
Horus rising and the sun being swallowed by Set at night.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
And
Yes.
I think those are the. I think Set is the dog-headed Egyptian god of the underworld that you see down here at the bottom of this Hermetic tarot. Am I right
Yeah.
on that, or is that
Yeah,
wrong?
you're right on that.
Okay, cool. And then Horus was like their solar savior god, their redeemer from the dark night. And I think that's really, I think it's relevant to this card because, you know, one thing that it's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, but I think it's more true in this card than any other card is that it truly is the dark night of the soul. I mean, only the moon to light your path.
mhm.
Right.
And here we have the dung beetle again, making its little balls of dung.
But for the first time, we see it with wings. It's
Right. And then there's this from the.
How long does it take to integrate? Sorry, I asked.
Takes
lifelong.
a lifetime.
Lifelong.
Okay.
So you're just because you're 35 doesn't mean you're behind the 8 ball.
How dare you? No one knows that. No one. I actually
You've mentioned it.
I'm teasing, but I actually do literally want to cry a little.
Okay.
Oh, thanks.
So there she is. Okay.
How do I look? That's the case with actresses. You say you're the younger, you know, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, you looked 27.
I
How's
look
that?
however I need to look. I'm like Jello. I take the mold and put in. That's
Right.
the feedback I've gotten from people. I've heard it enough freaking times that I'm like, I guess it must be true. You know,
Yeah,
it's not.
well,
It's just,
that does work. I mean, that's
tell me, I want to hear it.
being like Jello, so that you you mold to whatever is needed. I would think for an actress, that's exactly what you need.
As long as I have conviction, not just for anything, and that's a complicated thing. The movie you showed me, you were recommending to me, and I was watching. It's like that can be scary. Like you have to know what you're fighting for.
Okay.
What movie is it that you keep bringing up?
What's that? Oh,
Okay, so let's quickly do.
I don't want to.
Let's quickly do Jordan's card. Jordan, I would appreciate it if you would avoid talking about your artistic process and rather talk about the.
I just talk about the card. I just intend
Yeah.
to call out a couple of the symbolic features that I use. If you could zoom in. Yeah, certainly. We've already talked about the process. That'd be on previous videos. So good call. Primarily, the first piece is her hands. Could you zoom in or zoom out a little bit? I think it's thank you. Her hands are, in a sense, abstracted calla lilies, so gifts from Venus. So they are those flowers that would touch beauty. So she's reaching her beauty up. She's in the posture of the drawing down the moon ritual, which is the connection with the moon, connection with inner life, by literally going through the process and meditation of you raise your arms as if you are going to grasp and magnetically draw down the moon. The golden lit. Go ahead.
What is the moon? Raquel said, I'm 35 as well. Raquel, you're
Swiss cheese.
Huh? Say again.
Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese.
Oh, I said it's chaste. I was like, okay, but no, okay, I don't know what that means. But
Swiss cheese, as in cheese with holes in it. No, it's an old children's story piece. The moon's made of Swiss cheese. So, and then the golden ellipse is a symbol of the psyche, and then a 6-pointed flower.
Gesso or something. I don't know. I got to work on that.
So in regards to this, it's a cameo taken from the High Priestess card, actually, where it snips and enlarges just this piece of it. And then that way she then is moved forward from that place in the major arcana to evolve to here to draw down the moon. Then the pentagram, the 5-pointed star, subtly dotted into the middle, is then, of course, indicated of the 5 different elements, the 5 senses that are inside the moon.
Right.
So
She's flowing blood red life from her hands. So energetically, she is giving over to the left, down, back into the unconscious, and up to the right to the conscious. So she is connected as the fulcrum, if you would, of consciousness between consciousness and unconsciousness. In one sense, I'd call her liminal or nascent or sleepingly awake, if the paradox works, kind of coastline between consciousness and unconsciousness and the ebb and flow that occurs there. In short,
I
that's
really,
just
I really like the line, the fulcrum of consciousness. That's
thank you. Thank you. That
Yeah.
just came right now. That's not in my book, so I need to write that down.
grab hold of that.
Okay.
No, the fulcrum of consciousness.
Gotta
So,
go.
yeah, thank you for showing that.
I gotta go, you guys. I'm gonna watch the rest of my movie.
Okay, peace.
Take care.
Samantha.
I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, you guys. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. I think I have one or two more here, if I can find them. Nope, that's not it. Hold a minute. Oh gosh. Geez, I have so much junk on my desktop that I can't even. Okay, I'm sure we'd like to see the Patrick Valenza's card, the Deviant Moon. So here's the
one of my
Deviant-
favorite decks.
This is the Deviant Moon. You say that every week.
It is. I love this deck. It's so Carnival.
Yeah.
New Orleans, Mardi Gras,
Yeah,
fantasy.
Okay, there we go. Okay. And because of the hour, I'm not going to read from his book, but it's his imagery for the moon is always very, or for any of his cards, is always very interesting. So for what it's
Yeah,
worth.
puppets. That's like puppets of the moon. That one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'll talk with you all about golden threads someday. These are silver threads, but they also work.
Keep saying that, Skip. I'm beginning to wonder
Yeah,
if you're going to tell us about the saying golden thread.
Taunt tease. He's
Yeah.
building loyalty, brand loyalty.
I can hardly stand the anticipation.
I feel like, what commercial was that? That's like, the Heinz 57 anticipation. Yeah, so
Right.
just slow. Anyway,
Well, because golden threads are long and they're strung but long.
Yeah, I
Right.
kid.
Okay,
I know.
here you go. Here's the last two for tonight. Okay, so this is the Moonstrider, or the Line Strider deck on the right. And you see both the two dogs, one the domesticated and one the wolf. And on the left is the Spirit Song tarot, which she has chosen the owl to represent the moon. And she says imagination and perception. So imagination and perception is a hell of a lot more optimistic than Robert Wang's version of it.
well, yeah, she has all these. Her flowers are the vegetable. It's the plants that they're like these mandala topped flower
Yeah,
pieces. So it's
definitely.
almost an inner landscape of plant
Yeah,
fauna,
very,
flora.
very interesting painting. So anyway, okay. So has everybody had enough?
One thing I would say with the owl is they aren't able to move their eyes. They have to turn their head. And that's a nature trade-off that you always see owls, that they
But
have
They
taken
really
that
can
muscle.
swivel their heads though.
Right, exactly. And so what happens is the trade-off is that extra muscular power to move the eyes is directed into the ability to change the shape of the lens. So they can focus more than any other bird.
Interesting.
Which that would be
Okay,
Applicable to that moon card.
let's go around the room. Final comments. Since you're talking, Jordan, let's give your final comment on the moon here.
I thought this was a great session on the moon, and I love that we started out with the bodily intelligence piece, and then it showed up in cards. And I think thematically, it felt like we walked a pretty methodical path down that moon up to the mountain today. I was really impressed with the different expressions, not just in the cards, but here with the group, of how we were bringing things up that were kind of playing hot potato back and forth, but they were related. That impressed me a lot tonight.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, you want to have a wrap-up comment?
I don't know, just that there's always more journeying and you know, transformation is really what the card resonates for me to make me work through, if you like, I guess, for the next couple of weeks. I don't know, that's it. Yeah.
It's very, very encouraging to see your image there, because the rest of us are in the darkest night of the year.
Right.
Yeah, we've had 2 days of like really raining a lot. There's just so much moisture. I had to go to the shop to buy a lighter because the matches are all soggy. I couldn't light my barbecue. It's like, it's really it's really, you do get real extremes out here.
Well, I really like the fact that we have 3 continents represented here: Australia, South America, and North America. And so, Raquel, representing South America, what do you have to say?
Well, I think we had a great conversation about the card. For me, the moon card in a more personal level is a very hard card to deal with. Like, I draw this card on a daily basis. It's going to be a rather difficult day. If you work with tarot cards, like guiding your ear or stuff like that, a moon ear is a pretty weird. You're not difficult per se, but weird.
Yeah. Magic Sufi here says that I am in Ojai. So, Magic Sufi, do you mean Ojai, California, where Krishnamurti used to hang out? Is that what you mean? Or Brazil? I presume California, I suppose.
Ojai, I don't believe that it's South American. I don't know.
No, okay. There is an Ojai in California, though, and it's where Krishnamurti used to hang out.
Right.
And so Nick, if you haven't seen that word before, we talked about it earlier. So there it is. There's a synchronicity for you. Heard about the Ojai twice in one day, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite movies is The Big Lebowski, and towards the end, when Donnie dies, they pay homage to Donnie, talking about how he surfed from the beaches of might be Santa Cruz to Ojai. I don't know, but
yeah, it might be. So Magic Sufi says, yes, I met him. Okay, well, that's
nice.
That's sort of setting your age a little bit. Magic Sufi. Probably I could have met him if I had been in the right place at the right time. And Mike Sanchez says, my favorite story from you is The Two Wolves. It's actually not my story. It's actually a story that I think points to the fact that the North American natives now call them Native Americans, actually came from India or through India, because that story is actually the story of the Bhagavad Gita, the story of the humble warrior.
Right.
And so I spent all summer reading the Bhagavad Gita 4 times. Once my partner Kushbu did it in Sanskrit, and I read it 3 times in English from different versions. So Magic Sufi says 62. That must be an age, but so I've got you by a bit. So Nick, final comments here on the moon.
Okay, yeah. Final comments. People, you've got to get your shit together. All right? Stop eating trash. I kid. But all jokes aside, yeah, I mean, the moon has to do with, treating your body well and setting up a place in which, there's a great foundation on which consciousness and awareness of higher things can rest.
Right. Okay, and so Mike Sanchez, Jordan, just so you know, it says Skip always roasting Jordan with two big laughs in emoticons, and we know the truth of that. So
yeah, I'm cooked. But I'm not baked. So
yeah. Okay. So I'm very happy. Thank you all. I'm very happy that we had a good session tonight, and Raquel, I'm happy that you're happy.
Happy solstice to everybody.
Right.
Yeah, happy solstice.
Yeah, happy
The last one for the
solstice.
year, right?
And happy big star we can't see. So
Yeah. And
outside.
So
I don't guess I'll see you guys before Christmas. So Merry Christmas. I sent everybody their gifts, so hopefully they'll get to you soon. Obviously, some of you sooner than the others. Raquel, Nicole, I'm never shipping another international package. So
I was waiting. I wasn't going to tell you anything. You have to learn the hard way to remember that. I lost all my profits on my self-published deck by the 18 people who bought it in Europe. I mean, I was like, oh my God, it's $75 to ship this. Oh no. Oh no.
It wasn't as expensive as it was just a lot of paperwork.
Well, the paperwork too. I mean,
yeah, but anyways, I kid,
Oh, too funny.
I'm happy to do it.
So Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Have a wonderful time with your
Stay
family
safe.
if you can.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.